Planet Reddit. Today's story is...
My toxic family abandoned us when we lost our son. Years later, karma came unexpectedly, and we saved my niece from the same fate. I was suggested to share this in this subforum as it is more suitable for my story. I need to express what has happened to me, get unbiased opinions, and let off steam. I am using an anonymous account because the details are very personal, and I prefer to remain anonymous. Warning, this story is long because I tend to be very detailed. What I am describing is just one problem in an extremely difficult year, as there is much more. To begin with, my son died. My little boy was 13 months old. He was completely healthy. We adored him and took care of him with all our love. He was perfectly fine on Tuesday and died on Wednesday, 7 days later. This situation deserves its own full story. My relationship with my in-laws was cordial enough, but my mother-in-law has very immature and unpredictable behavior. My wife told me that her mother used to have problems with alcohol. As I developed more confidence in my relationship with my wife, I told her that I believed that her mother could have brain damage related to alcohol consumption. This is where I need help. My son needed urgent surgery because his brain, for unexplained reasons, was swelling. The doctors had to remove part of his skull to allow for expansion. My parents arrived an hour after my call. My in-laws, who are the main subject of this publication, arrived much later, despite living 30 minutes closer. My in-laws left as quickly as they arrived. My parents, on the other hand, stayed with us. They slept on the tables in the waiting room, waiting for news on whether our little one would survive. He made it through that first surgery, only to die the day after Mother's Day. My parents never left our side, even though they hadn't brought any clothes or personal items. My in-laws, on the other hand, didn't show up until it was time to say goodbye. My mother-in-law arrived wearing pajama shorts and a t-shirt so small that it didn't cover her stomach. She started asking the nurse if she had ever treated Indian people. While we took our time to say goodbye, she played noisily with her iPad. The nurses arranged for us to take our son outside one last time, even though he was on life support. You see, our son rarely cried, but when he did, we would just take him outside. This cheered him up instantly. Being outdoors was his favorite place in the world. My wife went first and took him under the stars for the last time, to say goodbye before it was my turn. Before I could do it, my in-laws asked us to hurry up. I was furious. I said to him in the calmest voice I could muster, "Get out of here." I wanted him to come back home. She took this as permission to go in. She stopped to clarify, and I simply repeated, "Get out." We took my son inside and they disconnected the machines that were keeping him alive. It was the hardest thing I have ever had to do. I have been diagnosed with depression, severe anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder, and I am taking antidepressants as a result. As we waited for him to pass away, his skin gradually turned gray. My mother-in-law decided to clean out his room in the hospital. The problem was that she was throwing away our documents from the social worker related to grief support. My mother stopped her from throwing them away while I yelled at her to stop. All this was happening while my father-in-law and sister-in-law sat there doing nothing, with expressions of annoyance. When he finally left, my wife had to wait for the nurses to take him from her arms, which was extremely difficult as he was completely inert. My mother-in-law left immediately. When my wife got up, she asked through her tears, "Where is my mom? I need a hug." We didn't see or speak to my in-laws for 2 days. We couldn't bear the pain of grief. I decided to clarify the situation and invited only my father-in-law to lunch. He arrived and made small talk, then got up to leave. I asked him, "What about lunch?" He replied that he needed to return home. We asked him to wait, that we had to talk about some matters. We described to him how hurt we were by my mother-in-law's behavior, and he replied that she was simply not handling the situation well. We told him that we would do our best to understand, but while we were processing our feelings, please ask her not to bother us. We also mentioned that if she was having difficulties, she had the option of not attending our son's condolence visit. We would understand. Her response was, "Well, I guess I'll go home and kill myself." I have no idea what she communicated to my mother-in-law. The next thing we knew, she called, saying, "I hear you're all upset with me. Too bad for you. I won't be attending the visit." And she hung up. I was furious. I felt that I had already failed as a father. I wasn't going to fail as a husband. I called her immediately and reprimanded her. Her response was, "I'm not going to talk to you if you're going to use that kind of language." I replied firmly that he had no right to speak to my grieving wife like that, and then pretend to occupy some kind of moral position. She hung up. He immediately called my wife, who had said and done nothing up to that point. He insulted her and hung up. He started calling us constantly. Then he started sending threatening messages saying he would hurt us. I called my father-in-law and told him to get control of the situation or I would call the police. He begged me not to and took the phone away from my mother-in-law. The call stopped. We received no support from my wife's family. They did not attend any of the events prior to my son's visit. My father-in-law arrived late for the visit, wearing cargo pants and a worn-out golf shirt. A few days passed. I called my wife's aunt, whom I hardly know as they are not a close family. I asked for her perspective on my mother-in-law. She told me that they had an argument more than 20 years ago. Apparently, it was about a sleepover that the aunt canceled because her daughter didn't want to attend. My mother-in-law, furious, said to her, "I hope you die." Then she drove to her house, knocked on the door, and repeated it to her face to face, "I hope you die." Apparently, my wife's family disappeared for 3 years. The extended family did not know her whereabouts. We then spoke to my wife's grandmother. She told us that my mother-in-law had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder years ago and had a history of violent behavior, even repeatedly hitting the grandmother with the door of a car. The grandmother confirmed that they had lost contact with my wife and in-laws for 3 years. I was afraid that my mother-in-law would be violent with my wife. My wife burst into tears, revealing that her mother had repeatedly beaten her during her bouts of drunkenness. We now have a clearer picture. My mother-in-law suffers from a mental illness. My father-in-law knew about it and hid it. He knew about my mother-in-law's instability, and yet he took her to the hospital. He mishandled the situation by keeping everyone uninformed. My wife very respectfully asked him to take some time away from communication, following the advice of her therapist, as she needed to heal and his family was causing more harm than help. Several months have passed, and we finally received news from him. I share his email below. I hope you are always in my thoughts. I am writing because we really need your help with Mom. She has been in the psychiatric unit of the hospital on 2 occasions, once for 6 days and then for more than 2 weeks. The origin of this problem was her reaction to the death of her grandson and how her response was handled. As her therapist says, each person reacts to death differently, and not all grief is the same. I think it would be healthier if you could get past this and start a healing process. Mom is currently returning to a very depressed state, caused by 2 factors, the absence of her grandson and the absence of her eldest daughter. She expressed this to her therapist in her last session. I'm sure Mom misses you and thinks of you often, but she's nervous about reaching out because she's afraid you won't be ready. Mom's therapist is very concerned about her mental state, so I think a phone call or a visit, just the 2 of you, would be a good option to see if you can reconnect on some level, even if you meet in a coffee shop or at the therapist's office. Whatever you both feel comfortable doing. It may or may not work, but I see this as a viable alternative to the current situation. Please think about this and let me know if it's possible for us to meet. We'd really like it to be possible. Love, Dad. In her reply, my wife revealed everything we had discovered and pointed out how he had failed as a father, including this email which lacked paternal concern for her well-being. She offered to meet with her mother's therapist if that would help. His response was, "I'm sorry to have disappointed you. Have a nice life." I was furious with this email. Not only did he show no interest in my wife's mental state, but he didn't even try to re-establish communication before making a request. My wife has decided to end her relationship with her parents. I have supported her decision as they have been toxic to our recovery. Addition, some personal details were removed from my father-in-law's email. Thank you all for your support. You made me cry, but in a positive way. Update 1. My sister is 4 years older than me. We were relatively close as my parents only had the 2 of us. She always bossed me around, but around the age of 12 I realized that she wasn't a kind person. My sister had done many negative things to me over the years. However, I constantly helped her, even to my own detriment, because I believe that's what families do, but she never helped me when I needed it. The few times she agreed to help, she backed out at the last moment. I could go on for years, but I'll get to the crux of the matter. 4 years ago, my wife and I were buying our first house. My brother-in-law had his own truck for his business. My sister offered to lend it to us for the move, as my brother-in-law was quite ill with lung problems and couldn't help with the load. Lending the truck would be her contribution. 2 days before the move, she called to tell me that she didn't want to wear out the vehicle. I was stressed and angry that she was doing this to me again. However, I kept calm. I assured her that they couldn't help because my brother-in-law was very ill and his nurse would arrive on the day of the move. She offered to pay for the rental of a moving truck and for me to book it. Okay, I booked the truck and called her back. She yelled at me, saying that I should reserve it in her name so that she could deduct it from her taxes. I agreed. She gave me her credit card number and then asked, "What now?" I answered her. She continued, "Aren't you going to ask me to help you with the move?" I was wondering what was going on in her mind. She had spent months telling me that they couldn't help. Even during this conversation, I told her no. She got angry again and accused me of using her just for her money. I'd had enough, so I replied, "You know what? If you think so little of me, the truck is already reserved on my credit card. I'm fine." I hung up and didn't speak to her again for 2 years. What made me resume the relationship was that my brother-in-law was dying. I decided that, no matter how difficult the situation, everyone deserves to have a family. I reached out and asked if he needed anything. He asked me to visit his husband in the hospital, so I did. I visited him weekly until he was moved further away. Then I started calling him on the phone. He passed away waiting for a lung transplant. My mother called me with the news, and I told her I would go straight to my sister's house. My mother warned, "Maybe you won't be welcome there." I replied that it didn't matter, family is family. If she threw me out, so be it. I had to try to be there for her and her children. We never really reconciled. We just pretended that nothing had happened. I went back to attending family events, trying to provide them with a sense of family. My son was born approximately 6 months later. It became more difficult to be there for her as I struggled to adapt to my role as a new father, with a stressful job. But I made sure I was available in difficult moments. My sister made little effort to participate in my son's life. This confused me, because initially she was very excited about his birth, considering him a source of light in her life. She made regular trips to my city and drank excessively, precisely in the bar on the corner of my house, without even visiting us. I found out that she had started having relationships with other people after her husband passed away. I'm not one to judge by promiscuity, and considering that my brother-in-law was sick for so long, I understand that she needed it. Initially, I supported her. Then she started to get involved with my mother's boss. Things started to get out of hand. My nephew quit hockey because he was being bullied in the locker room. We were all surprised because he loved the sport and was very sociable. We later found out that my sister had been in a relationship with one of the team's parents, a married man. Then we heard that she had had a disagreement with her best friend. She just told us that she was a terrible person. The friend told us that they argued about my sister's new boyfriend. She couldn't stand him because he was a drug dealer. We have relatives in law enforcement, so we investigated. Sure enough, he had been charged as recently as 2016. He was released on a technicality. He also had his driver's license suspended, but he drove his car with the children in it. The family relationship became very tense. Then my son passed away. She made an effort when he was in hospital, but then she distanced herself. She ignored the celebration of his life that we organized, without explanation or contact. I gathered all my strength to attend my son's 8th grade graduation the following week. She refused to sit with us, or even talk to us. I stopped communicating with her after that. She sent me a message last month saying she was giving me space, her way of saying she was ignoring me. I expressed my disappointment and that her attitude had been dismissive. I expressed my disapproval and blocked her number. This time I'm done with her for good. It turned out that she was pregnant with the dealer's child. She named it after her late husband. I joked about this with my therapist, saying that my life had become something like a Jerry Springer show. I sent a message to my nephew when I thought it was safe to do so, as she often takes his phone and reads his messages. Sometimes she even replies pretending to be him. I expressed my love to him and told him that even though I was no longer part of his mother's life, I would still be present in his. I assured him that he would always have my support if he needed it, and that my door would always be open. I feel he will need it. I learned from my mother that last week he told my sister to leave. Please don't think that my nephew is disrespectful. He is a young man of integrity who attends a Christian school. He has suffered a lot and has had enough of her. Just like all of us. Update 2. Some time has passed. I thought I would share some new information and details that I had not mentioned before. Since my last post, we have not heard from my wife's family. Email was our last contact. We spent Christmas with my wife's aunt. She asked if we wanted to know anything about them. We replied that we did not want to know. They are out of our lives. We struggle daily with our loss. We do so without support, as my parents live far away. The situation became extremely difficult last year. The unemployment benefit was insufficient. During my bereavement leave, I was dismissed. I was under contract, so there were no laws to protect me. I tried to take my own life on 2 occasions. I felt that I had failed as a father and again as a man. Finally, I consulted a psychiatrist, and I am currently taking antidepressants. I am starting with a new grief counselor this week, and I have started looking for a job, as I finally feel capable of doing so. My wife recently gave birth to a baby girl. I now have a daughter. A small part of me is healed, although it is a bittersweet experience to be a father again. We told very few people about the pregnancy, maybe 10 at most. Any complication can arise during a pregnancy. We didn't want to face the world if we lost another child. I later realized that the people we trust enough to tell are the same ones who came to our house to check on our well-being. It's hard to hide a pregnancy when people physically observe how your wife increases in size. I mention this because my sister decided to stop talking to us. Naturally, she was unaware of the pregnancy. On the day my daughter was born, I informed my nephew. I appreciate him too much to make him feel excluded. I guess he told his mother, who was furious. I don't understand why, beyond her narcissism and aversion to not being the center of attention. She called to scold my parents. Meanwhile, her drug-dealing boyfriend sent me a message criticizing my parents and me. I replied, "My son died. My daughter has just been born. Is this the person she wants to be today?" He insulted me. I told him to keep his dignity and blocked his number. I should mention that my sister and her drug-dealing boyfriend also had a baby last year. They didn't tell me. I am confused by this double standard. My sister spent the first week of my daughter's life calling all our acquaintances with whom she still had a relationship, demanding to know if they knew about the pregnancy. Of course, as we kept it a secret, they all denied knowing. This is the last indirect contact I have had with her, although I doubt she will remain silent. My sister-in-law, who I hadn't mentioned before, unblocked us on social media. I can only assume she did it while trying to see photos of our daughter. She also sent us a gift for the baby with no return address. I believe she did it to force us to open it before identifying the sender. We later donated her gift to a charity, as we did not want any connection with her. My wife does not want reminders of her family. I do not know if my mother-in-law is informed about my daughter. Her mother, my wife's grandmother, asked people not to tell her this news, as it could affect her mental health. Update 3. Greetings to all. It's been a while. I have numerous updates. I'll start with myself. I have been under the care of a counselor and a psychiatrist. I seem to have found the right balance of medication for depression and anxiety. Lately, I have been feeling considerably better. Thanks to my psychiatrist, I was approved for disability payments. I now have some income. Because of this, we decided that my wife should return to work while I look after our daughter. I have been a full-time father since September. The situation has progressed favorably. My daughter is now older than my son was when he passed away. We remain estranged from my mother-in-law and my wife's immediate family. However, my wife's aunt has been very understanding. I have developed a clearer perspective on the toxic nature of my wife's family relationship. I thank all of you for this. My wife attended bereavement counseling for our son, but today she started therapy to address the problems with her family. She returned home noticeably happier, which is encouraging. Now we come to the real conflict. My sister. She definitely suffers from narcissistic personality disorder. Accepting this has helped me enormously. I now understand that my sister is incapable of loving me as I deserve. She continues with the drug dealer and they are now engaged. My oldest nephew is almost 16. He has a full-time job and plays on the basketball team. He uses these activities as excuses to avoid being at home. There have been recent troubling developments. My 13-year-old niece has been physically and verbally abused. She has been kicked and slapped. They have tied her up and gagged her with duct tape. They regularly call her derogatory names. The justification they offer is that she mainly socializes with boys. What they don't understand is that she socializes with boys because she has a similar level of maturity to them. She doesn't enjoy trivial conversations with girls her own age. She prefers to play football and hide and seek with boys. My niece met a Lebanese boy at a church event. They established a good relationship and became friends. My sister found a photograph of them together on social media and overreacted. She made racist remarks and told my niece that Muslims would love to capture a blonde girl and take her to Lebanon. This was extremely confusing to me because, first, they met at a church event, and second, we did not grow up in a racist environment. My niece believes that the trafficker introduced these racist attitudes into the home. It is also disconcerting to me considering that I am biracial, German and Japanese. My niece was forbidden to see this boy simply because of his ethnicity. However, one day they found him in a shopping center. The dealer held him down, put a knife to his neck, and threatened him to get him away from my niece. He was arrested for this incident and released pending trial. They blamed my niece for the whole situation and started to assault her at home. It all culminated when my sister said, "I wish you would kill yourself." My niece then went to the kitchen, took a knife, and cut her wrist. My niece's friends at school informed Child Protection Services, and an investigation was launched. My sister warned her that if she lost custody of any of her children because of this incident, she would disinherit her and no longer love her. Due to the charges against the trafficker and the investigation by Child Services into my sister, who had not been in touch with my parents, she called them in desperation. As an alternative, my mother suggested sending my niece to the South to stay with them. My sister, in desperation, accepted. My niece is currently safe and happy with my parents. And I agree that they should keep her with them at all costs. She cannot return to that abusive environment. I will keep you informed if they obtain legal custody, as the battle is just beginning. We receive small fragments of information from my niece. They emerge as she remembers events. She mentions that the trafficker uses drugs, and when he is under the influence, he becomes paranoid. He takes out a machete and keeps it with him. He often forgets it and leaves it on the sofa, where the little boy can find it. I had to ask her something that I sensed in my heart, but I needed confirmation. She revealed that she and her older brother did not attend my son's celebration of life because my sister forbade them to. My niece and nephew still love me, but their mother has kept them from me. I knew this was happening deep down, but it hurts deeply to confirm that I was deprived of their love and comfort at the most difficult time of my life. I will provide updates when I have more information. Update 4. I'm sorry for leaving you without information for so long. I decided to take a break from Reddit, as writing about family really takes its toll emotionally, even when the events happened a while ago. Remembering them is still painful, and even though some time has passed, the pain lingers. I will try to pick up where I left off, talking about my niece. Fortunately, she did not have to return to her mother or the trafficker. My parents obtained custody. My sister did not even complicate the process. She already had an established opinion about my niece, and I think she preferred to keep her at a distance. The situation with my nephew was different. At least he did not experience the same level of violence as my niece, and when he came of age, he left. With my younger niece, the daughter of the trafficker, the situation was completely different. My parents tried to contact Child Protection Services, but on each visit they could not find sufficient grounds to remove the child from parental custody. I recognize that initiating that process is extreme, but in my sister's case, it was justified. Fortunately, after months of trying to find some way to protect that baby, the boyfriend was arrested for possession and attempted distribution of illegal substances. He will be in prison for a long time. This was a positive outcome for everyone because my sister realized that she did not want to be responsible for my niece. She offered custody to my parents, considering that they were already taking care of one of their daughters. The meeting with my parents' lawyers so that she would give up custody was terrible. My sister did not stop insulting, including comments about my other niece, who was not present. However, they signed all the necessary documentation and tolerated her behavior, exclusively for the well-being of my niece. They needed to take her away from her mother. Subsequently, neither my parents nor I know what has happened to my sister. We know that she returned to her home, but we have not kept in touch, and we do not know if she is still there or if she has left. The situation is similar with my in-laws. They are complicated people, and I am glad that they have kept their distance. As for our own life, we continue to struggle to live with the pain of having lost a child. Having another child does not replace or make us forget the one we lost, but our daughter has provided us with some comfort, if that makes sense. Little in our life seems coherent, but we continue to try to find some peace. This is my last update, as I had not planned to return. However, I felt the need to provide closure to this story, even though I would prefer not to revisit all the details of my life. That is why I have tried to keep it as brief as possible. My wife and I are moving forward day by day with our little girl, cherishing every moment together while honoring the memory of our son. Although the pain never completely goes away, we have learned to live with it. My parents visit when they can and have become a great support to us, especially now that they also take care of my nieces. As for the toxic families we have left behind, both mine and my wife's, we have not had any more important news. Sometimes we get some information through third parties, but we have decided to keep those doors closed for the sake of our mental health and the well-being of our daughter. My therapy continues to help me process everything that has happened and to develop tools to manage the difficult moments. My wife is also making progress with her therapist, and together we are building a safe and loving home for our little girl. Thank you all for listening to my story, and for the support you have given me throughout these updates. It has meant a lot to me to be able to share this and to receive your kind words and advice. I wish you all the best.